Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today. Hey listeners, welcome back to another episode of Advantages to Aging. I'm your host, DJ Horton, and today's a little bit of a sad but also exciting day here at Advantages to Aging podcast. You know, every new beginning is another beginning's end, and that's where I'm at. Another new beginning, which unfortunately means it's the end of Advantages to Aging. This has been a great experience, and I hope that you have learned lots through the process as I have. And I wanted to share some of those things with you because maybe you haven't really grasped all that you can learn from these episodes. And you can go back and listen to any of them on my website, advantagestoaging.com. You can listen to all of my guests and hear all their words of wisdom. I swear, every time I listen to an episode, just like every time I read a book, I learn something else, something that I didn't even notice the first time I listened. And that's kind of where I realized I wanted to make sure that when this podcast sunsetted, that it was done in such a way that people don't go, oh, well, that was a nice run and walk away. There is so much that you can learn from the episodes, 3 years worth, that as you listen to them over and over again, you will listen and learn so much more because you are a different person each time you listen to them. And I realized as I was listening to some of them and thinking about what's going on in my life and whether or not this is really the right time to decide to sunset the podcast, I realized that I had set some very specific goals when I started this podcast, and I periodically measure them, just like I do with any other goal. And I realized that I not only hit each of those goals, but I exceeded those goals. And I had to reassess at one point some of those goals and set even higher goals because honestly, if you remember when I first started, I thought, I can't do this. Like, why would I do this? Like, I don't have that much to offer. Well, you know, I really do, as do you. You have so much experience. And each and every day we have a decision to make. How are we going to take the time that we have been given and make it our best effort, become our best version of ourselves? Because that's really what life is about, right? It's taking those God-given gifts and going as far and as fast as you possibly can. And will you falter along the way? Of course you will. Everybody does, because we're beginners. And each time we decide to try something new, we are a beginner and we're bound to make mistakes. Isn't that how we learn? Making those mistakes, picking ourselves up, dusting ourselves off, and trying it just a little bit differently this time. And, you know, I decided that as I was reassessing whether to continue with the podcast, I realized that, you know what, this is kind of like just one more thing in my life. I reassess all of my relationships. I reassess all of my business practices. I reassess all of the products and services that I represent and I use. Don't you? Like if something doesn't seem to quite be feeling right, you sit and think about like, how can I make this better? Unless, of course, you have that negative mindset, in which case you're probably not listening to this podcast because this is really about shifting your mindset and finding the positives that fuel you instead of make you be that much more negative. So reassessing, I realized that I'm still serving you and the greater good, the greater community, but right now I need to be looking at my own time and my own well-being. I'm not sick or anything, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not. But I realized that with an aging parent and two successful business, well, three, counting this podcast, three successful businesses, something needed to give, and I didn't want it to be my health. So as I also thought about that, I said, one more thing, one more tip that I can give to you is don't burn any bridges. When you decide that it's time to leave something, make sure that you do it in such a way that you can hold your head high. Don't, even if you're leaving a bad situation, don't stoop to that level. Either let them come up to meet you at your level or just bless them and move on. And so I hope that, one of the things that you can take away from this particular podcast is that there are times in life, no matter how difficult it may be, how much you might love what you do. And trust me, I love being your host of this podcast, but it's time for me to move on and let someone else fill this void. Now, as I said, all of these episodes are going to be here for you to listen to over and over and over again. I still love hearing your feedback. So please be sure to reach out. And who knows, maybe someday Advantages to Aging will be back. So this is DJ Horton, your host of the now sunsetting Advantages to Aging podcast. You will always be in my heart. And I hope that each and every one of you live your life to its fullest and ask yourself each morning, how great can it get?
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.